ready for this? It's showtime. Lights, fans, action. Oh yeah, we've got action. Faster, tougher, more ferocious. There's nothing like League. This is the Betfred Super League.
Got me here. It took a big chunk out of me. Bleeding. It's bleeding. Oh no, it's bleeding. The thing just ripped my ear off. What do you think?
It's a significant week for Rugby League. August the 29th, 1895 was the official date that the game was born, when 22 clubs resigned from the Rugby Football Union and formed the Northern Rugby Football Union to become known in 1922 as the Rugby Football League. So to mark this milestone for the great game, this is a special edition of Eddie and Stevo, the podcast, and our supporters at Betfred, as we look back over 130 years of history.
And the European Super League is underway. It's wide to West. It's wide to West. Dwayne West inside to Joyce. Joyce. Fantastic! They've won it. Robinson, what a try! Billy Wears with a try under the sticks. Dooling wanting to kick on. I think a chip again for Prescott. He kicks it through. It's a race between Prescott. Oh, he's there again!
Easton's overhead pass is swooped on by John Atkinson. Roger Millward, the star of the day, with 2 tries.
Oh, good running here. Oh, he's still going, Robbie. He's over. And there's the first try. Martin a fire. Trying to make some space. Now then, Martin a fire. He's got Alan Tate to beat on the outside. I'm sure he's going to go the full length. That is one sensational try. That was ranked amongst the finest ever seen on this ground. O'Brien has gone for it, and he's got it. O'Brien has saved Salford.
Quick hands and a reach for the line by Braden Williami.
Oh, he's got under the Burrow, and he's outstripped Wellens. It's a brilliant Burrow try, a fantastic Rod Burrow try. And Carney with space ahead of him. What a try for Brian Carney.
It's a good shot, but it's a goal! Do something nice, went over for a try! He's going to score a try! It's a try! Sensational last minute try!
The cup winners.
And I'm delighted to say we are joined this week by a man who knows more about the 13-a-side code than anyone else on this planet. I'm referring, of course, to Ian Proctor, who for 30 years, I'm proud to say, was by our side as we brought you over 2,000 live games on Sky Sports. Ian, first of all, thanks so much for joining us. Can we start at the very beginning? Many thousands of rugby league fans listening to this. Take us back to the very beginning, and for those who perhaps don't know, what happened 130 years ago to bring the game to life?
Well, I wasn't there, Eddie, but I can tell you what happened. I think it was a case of clubs wanting to recompense players or having to play broken time. Most of the northern clubs, they had 6-day weeks, did the players who played. And so they wanted to pay them for the time they lost for working. And of course, they went to the rugby union and asked about this, and it was knocked back. And so 22 clubs, I think, got together at the George Hotel, famously in 1895, 29th of August, and they voted to break away from the Rugby Football Union. And the following week, 7th of September, the season opened with 22 clubs.
Fantastic. Stevo, it's great to have Ian with us, isn't it?
Yeah, sure is. I mean, it's nice to have the brain of rugby league on our show, Eddie. And Ian, look, it's safe to say you've got the largest library on rugby league history in the world. But what made you want to become the brain of rugby league? And at what age did you start collecting information?
Well, you embarrass me, you and Eddie, because I don't claim to be the brain of rugby league, and I don't have the library in rugby league. But I've always had a love for the game and started going when I was 7 years of age, like most people do with their fathers. And I had a neighbour who had a load of rugby league magazines, not the Rugby League, it was the one before that, the Rugby League Review, back in the 50s it was. I wasn't around in the 50s watching the game, but these magazines came from that era. I was just like blown away with all these photographs and stories, and it just captured my mind. And so therefore, although I was just like following Leeds at the time, it became a rugby league thing, and it just developed into the love of the game rather than just Leeds, and so it developed from there really.
Fantastic. Look, Stevo, you've been around for a good number of these 130 years, haven't you? I mean, you played the game both here and in Australia, winning Man of the Match award in a championship final, playing for Great Britain, winning a World Cup. What's your outstanding memory of the last 130 years?
Well, I think mostly, Eddie, being personal about it all, is that obviously to win a World Cup, to me, is the ultimate in any sport. But I have to thank the Shawcross Boys Club. I'm the president of the club, and ever since they gave me the opportunity to play my first game, it set me on the path to a wonderful career that I just enjoyed. I keep telling everybody it's the greatest game of all, and it is. It's fantastic.
And he wasn't a bad player, was he, from all accounts, 130 years ago?
He was pretty good, actually. Broke my heart in 73 when Dewsbury beat Leeds in that championship final, as you mentioned. He scored 2 tries, easily the man of the match. He'd won the World Cup a few months earlier, and of course it wasn't too long after that Penrith came knocking on his door, took him to Australia for a world record fee, which isn't bad for a hooker. And although Penrith were a struggling team when Stevo arrived there, they've become the powerhouse of the NRL now.
Yeah, they have, haven't they? I mean, a world record fee, Stevo. People paid money for you at that level.
And can I also say, I did not get 1 penny of that £20,000. Dewsbury, would you believe, they threatened to take me to court because they said it was an international transaction. Now, the transfer fee, you were supposed to get 10%. Now, 10%, 10% £2,000 was a lot of money way back in 1973, and the buggers never paid it for me. Thankfully, Penrith decided that because they'd done the wrong thing, they paid me 4,000 Aussie dollars, which was equivalent then to £2,000. So I finally got the money. And being a Yorkshireman, I was very proud of that.
I bet you were. Ian, I wonder what that would be worth today. $2,000 in 73. What are we looking at then? And what about the fee? 20 grand. What would that be? Be a world record now, wouldn't it?
I'm not quite sure. I was just looking up actually with the 1895 thing, what the broken time payments were set at, and it was 6 shillings per day. 6 shillings per day they were given for breaking.
That's more than he earned on Sky.
I just wonder if Stevo, though, he was a trailblazer at Penrith, as I say, and they are the powerhouse team in the NRL now. And I just wonder if he feels a certain sense of pride at being at the start of what's become such a great team, and also being involved there with Phil Gould, I think, was like the guru of the game in Australia now. And he was there when he sort of made his debut, weren't you, Stevo?
Yeah, and in fact, when I retired, I convinced the club that here was a young man that not only played good rugby league football, but he had a very good rugby league brain. He wasn't frightened about saying certain things, especially when we were at training. And I could tell straight away that this guy was going to make an impact both on and off the field of rugby league. And I think when you look back, he's done that.
The game has changed, hasn't it, lads? Over the years. I mean, in 1895, I can't imagine what the game looked like. I know there were huge crowds wherever the game was played. What do you two think is the best ever era for rugby league?
I think it began to change when they brought the limited tackles in instead of the unlimited tackles. I know some old timers would think that was a bad move at the time, but you had coaches like Roy Francis who really opened the game, and the game became much more spectacular. And then I think another factor was in '83 when they lifted the overseas transfer ban just after the Kangaroos had been in '82. We saw how brilliant that team was, and then we began to see some of that team begin to play for club sides over here like Peter Sterling and Brett Kenny and Mal Meninga and Wally Lewis.
I think you've also got to look at it, Ian, is the fact that it certainly saved me, because I only played one season at unlimited tackle, where the hookers that I was playing against, they were around about 14, 15, 16 stone. It was all about possession, getting the percentage your way. And I came onto the scene at 11.5 stone. I know I put a little bit of weight on since, but it was when they changed it the following season, it gave me a golden opportunity, because hookers never ran enough from dummy half. And of course, when we started with the 4 tackle rule, then it became the 6 tackle rule. It gave me a wonderful opportunity because I had a little bit of pace. I was a bit speedy at times. And it changed the whole complexion about how I took to rugby league in the newborn era, as we called it.
Yeah, it was brutal for hookers in the previous era, wasn't it, Stevo? Just had to get the ball out, and that was mainly your job. I remember my dad telling me about a hooker for Bradford called Vic Darlison, who played in 3 successive Wembley finals in the 40s when Bradford went down to Wembley. And he said he used to be at Featherstone. He said he used to be in the pub drinking beer before about 2:00, and then a taxi had come and take him to Wansell. And my dad said to him, "How do you play this game?" He says, "Lad, my job is simple: get on that field, get that ball out of that scrum, and get out of the way." He says, "That's all I have to do." And then great hookers came in like yourself, Stevo, and Phil Clark's dad, Colin. He was a real trailblazer, playing at Wembley at 19 and going on tour at 20. And then it began to develop for hookers, didn't it, as opposed to any other position?
I came to this game pretty late on. I think, Stevo, you refer to it pre-1980 as BE, before Eddie. That's when I really started getting involved in the game. But looking back and listening to you two, 1895, the sport started because of a row. I think it's been rowing with itself ever since, hasn't it? It really has.
Well, you've also got to look at the fact that that the people that are having to miss work and forego getting a wage, which was classified as broken time, that changed everything. And look, I always think about these people who took this enormous step. I mean, it was just never thought of being paid to play a sport, but it wasn't being played to be paid. It was to make up for what you'd lost by not having to work on a Saturday.
Yeah, it was some brave decisions were made in those early days. I mean, obviously breaking away from the rugby union at the time was very brave. But then you started to have, the first tourists came over here with the New Zealanders in 1907, and then the Australians came in 08. And then we went down under in 1910. Those were massive decisions in those days. And then, of course, you got to 1929 and the first Wembley final, and that really transformed the game, I think, in that, people had a goal to aim for every single year going down to Wembley.
That was massive, Ian, wasn't it? 1929. I mean, there was no M1 in 1929. I doubt if there'd be a direct train. How on earth did people get down to Wembley and fill the place? Because they did, didn't they? They filled the place in 1929.
Well, most of the travel was virtually by train, Eddie.
Steam train.
Well, it was very, very difficult, of course, in regards to in the 1829 to be able to actually go see a reserve grade or a first grade, because you really couldn't afford to get there in the first place. So it was really, when you played at home, it was virtually a home crowd.
And the crowds weren't massive, actually, Eddie, in those early days. I mean, the first one was 41,000, Wigan and Dewsbury, 1929.
That's not bad.
And they didn't get above 50,000 until 1936 when Leeds played Warrington. But it was after the post-war era, wasn't it? When people came back from the war and everybody wanted to, go see sport. I mean, we had 77,000 for Bradford Leeds in 1947, and then Wigan took it to 90-odd thousand the following year. And then we had the famous replay in '54 at Odsal, Warrington and Halifax, 102,569 at Odsal. Packed the ground out, but apparently you couldn't move around Yorkshire for miles around Bradford that night. Again, I always laugh at my dad. He went to Wembley for the final. He said it was the most boring game he'd ever seen. There wasn't a try, and he refused to go to the replay and missed out on history.
It was historic, wasn't it? That was, and I think Eddie Waring spoke afterwards on the television, and that really was a true milestone. 100, and I don't think 102,000 people paid to get in, did they?
No, they broke the gates. A lot of people said there were more than that because of that fact. I mean, I was at Castleford the other week, and I was telling some of the lads I work with, I says, there were 30-odd thousand here for a replay in 1967. They didn't believe me. Castleford played Hull KR in a replay in 67, a cup replay, and Roger Millward had transferred from Cass to Hull KR that previous year, and he came back to Castleford Hull KR. And, everybody took a day off work and went to that game on a Wednesday afternoon, and the 30,000 at Castleford. Incredible.
Good Lord. And no, of course, in those days, I would imagine no floodlights, were there? It had to be afternoons.
I don't know whether Cass had got them, because they played in the first floodlit final and won it in 65, 6 and 7. They won the first three. But I think Cass might have had very minimal floodlights, and it would have been in March, so it probably would have needed. But they had a daylight kickoff. I know it was that fact. And my dad just said everybody took half a day off and went to watch that match. It was a classic.
Wow.
Ian, what's your thoughts on the modern day records in regards to that? Sometimes when you see into a program, they only publish the results from Super League. Now, I know a lot of youngsters that perhaps think that Rugby League only started with Super League. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, we get a lot of criticism from some people saying, we only talk about Rugby League from 1996. Well, I've never ever looked at the game beyond 1996. I mean, I think everything that went before that was equally worth recording. I mean, who can forget Martin the Fire, or before that Billy Boston or Brian Bevan, the try-scoring feats that they produced, and of course Sir Billy Boston now. But I mean, Martin the Fire, he was incredible if you saw him play. And then you'd Ellery Hanley, those guys. So there's much more to the game since 1996, isn't there? I mean, we had to push the game in 96 to try and get Super League off the ground. But the feats of players from previous eras all count the same as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. Some outstanding players. I can only, as I say, go back to the 80s, but Andy Gregory, Joe Lydon, Ellery Hanley, Martin Afai you've talked about, Paul Sculthorpe, Andy Farrell, Lee Breers, Kevin Sinfield, Rob Burrow. The list is endless. What about the best player, Ian, and you, Stevo, the best player you've both ever seen?
Well, I'm very fortunate because I did actually see Brian Bevan play live. My father took me to a game at Warrington. I can't remember how old I was, but I know I was still at school. And when you look at the try-scoring record of this one man, Brian Bevan, I mean, first time I looked at him, I thought he looked about 50 years of age. He was bald and he had strapping all around his ankles and all around his knees, on his elbows. And then all of a sudden, when he got the ball, nobody could stop him. I mean, he was just magic.
Yeah, he's a wizard, wasn't he? I think Leeds took that same view. I think he came to Leeds for a trial. I didn't rate him, so he went to Warrington, and the rest was history. I mean, Billy Boston was quite different, wasn't he? He was lithe when he began, and he was hard to catch, but he bulked up a little bit in later years, but he was unstoppable. He was like, somebody once said he was like a cross between Jonah Lumu and Jason Robinson, which would be the perfect winger, wouldn't he?
Well, without a doubt, that is for sure. But and isn't it wonderful, Ian, that we have our first Sir Billy Boston? What a great honour for our game, but even a bigger honour for one of the nicest blokes you'll ever meet in rugby league.
They couldn't have picked a better man, could they, for that award? And, you know, I don't think anybody in the game has a bad word to say about Billy Boston. A great bloke on the field and off the field even more so. And I think the smile we saw when he got the award, and then the other week at Wigan when he was on that throne, it was quite something, wasn't it? You just couldn't help but smile at him.
It was brilliant. Ian, why do you think it has taken 130 years for rugby league to get a first night? I know we had Rodney Walker, I understand all that, but it wasn't necessarily for rugby league that Sir Rodney got his gong. Why has it taken this length of time?
I can only say politics, probably. And I've always said, you know, it's a little bit of a class war that we broke away in the first place, wasn't it? Really?
Yeah, that's true.
It was, you know, on that sort of basis we broke away from the.
Well, you know, we've got to look at the fact that the rugby union mob just didn't want us to have any success, any high profile at all, whether they like it or not. If you just look back over the many, many years, the rugby union, they tried to, you know, beat us off and finish our game. They've tried many times, and that's why I used to get so excited about the fact that we would poach, especially from Wales, some of the great rugby union players to come and play what I said before, the greatest game of all.
Yeah, Jonathan Davis, Jim Mills, going back even further, Billy Boston, you know.
Lewis Jones.
We have Lewis Jones, correct. We've had a lot of success.
Yeah.
Of course, the late great David. Yeah, indeed. Yeah. I mean, you know, the game has had so many changes over the years, hasn't it? Playing structure, one league, playoff to win the championship in those days. That would be known as the grand final now, of course. Promotion, relegation, 1973-74 was it? Split to two divisions. 1996, Super League, full-time professionals. Better these days than way back when, do you think?
I think the great thing, Eddie, is that we're going to have a test series with the Australians coming up at the end of this season, which is long overdue. 22 years since they last came over, the Kangaroos. And I think back to Stevo's time when he was in the Great Britain team. You look back to the 70s, Stevo, and there was something on almost every year, wasn't there? Where there was World Cups in 70, 72, 75 and 77. The Aussies came here in 73 and 78. We went down under 70, 74 and 79, and the Kiwis came in 71 and 80. That was a period where there was always something to look forward to at the end of the year. And of course, when we went to summer, things began to change because we were running concurrent with their season, so it made things much more difficult. But the fact that they're coming this time, even though it's only a 3-test series, which is disappointing because we all love the midweek games, and I know the Aussies love to be the ones who are in the emus, as they call them, the midweek team. I've heard them talk, and they all speak fondly about coming to England and say it was the best trip of their lives.
Oh, it was, Ian. And when you think about the fact that there was something nearly on every single year, and I mean, it's been 20 years since we've had a test series. And thankfully, they are stating that it's a sellout for every single game. Now, that hasn't happened for quite some time.
Well, if they sell out for Wembley, they will do, because Everton and Headingley are obviously sold out. And again, we talk about progress and how things have changed. I mean, I think to your first test debut, Stevo, in 71 for Great Britain against Kiwis at Castleford, and the crowds for that series were absolutely dire. I think we only had 12,000 for the 3 tests in that series.
Yeah, so you're right.
You know, we say rugby league's on a bit of a downward trend at the moment, things, you know, off the field. But, you know, you think back to the 70s when things seemed to be really at a low ebb. But at least in those days, we had a national newspaper system whereby rugby league was in every day. We've lost that now, haven't we? We've lost that publicity of the dailies publishing something every day about the sport, and that's something I think we've lost.
No, absolutely, and there's only Sky, really, isn't there, pushing the boat for rugby league at them. I know BBC do a bit, and there's all various other not as good podcasts as this, but they all try and spread the word. I wonder, have we tinkered too much over the 130 years? It's always good to evolve and improve, so long as it's for the betterment of the game. But have we just messed about a bit too much with rules and season changes, and promotion, relegation, gradings, structures? Points make prizes. I don't know. What do you think?
It's difficult, Ian, to sort of cut through so many of these changes. There was a period, I know, when I was playing, that there was always something new that they'd voted on to change this, to change that. I think one of the best things for, as far as the fans were concerned, was taking away the fact that if a try was scored in the corner and the winger had touched the flag, he was classified as being out of play.
Yeah.
And
Brilliant.
some of the greatest tries ever scored in our game comes out on the wing, where these are not just smart athletes, they're unbelievable athletes.
Oh, it's one of the best. I think the two best moves that have been made is that one that you've just talked about, taking the corner flag out of contention so that players can dive in and score at the corner. Every winger can produce that, it seems, these days. And the other one was the 40-20 kick rule, which was brought in, which allows teams to turn defence into attack.
What about the 10-metre rule at the play of the ball? Now, my memory plays tricks with me, but I'm sure we were at a game and Morris was being interviewed in the corner of the ground because he was running the game then, Morris Lindsay, and he announced live on Sky that as from today, we were going back 10 metres. Is my memory playing tricks with me, or did that really happen?
I can't remember that actually happening a game all of a sudden like that, but it was a massive introduction to the game. 1992 it occurred, yeah. And Morris had just taken over from David Oxley as the chief executive of the game, so it would have been that year. I can't remember the game though, like you say, but that was a massive change in the game, because from 5 yards, I think it used to be, or 5 metres, it used to be much, much harder, obviously, to create space. But a lot of old timers said that the game was better then because, you had to be creative to make those gaps, Steve. You'd remember guys like Ray Batten and Dougie Lawton who could slip a pass, couldn't they, through a needle, really.
Yeah, and I think you've got to point the finger at what we call modern day coaches, because they work on a very good basis of you've got to make sure your defence is solid, and if you get defend on top in your defence, then you'll probably finish up winning the game. So there's a little bit of negativity that's been brought into our game, but also at the same time, the 4 tackle rule, then the 6 tackle rule, has changed it. I'm not so sure, being a former hooker, it was great for me when they changed it to unlimited, and in return, but there's no use for the scrum as far as I'm concerned, because you find now that the hooker, number 9 on his back, picks the ball up in a loose forward situation at the base of the scrum, and I'm thinking, what's the point of having a scrum? Because you can't push. If you push, you get penalised. And to me, slowly but surely, I think it has to be phased out of our game.
I think it's good that they can work moves from the scrum. It's the one time when there's not all the players are on the field, so you've got some space to create tries from the scrum base. So I think it's still good in that respect. I don't know if you've seen the NRL this weekend, Stevo, but I can't remember a weekend quite like it. The Penrith game against Canberra, where
outstanding.
Cleary takes a drop goal in Golden Point, hits the upright, the ball comes out, and Canberra go the length of the field and score a try. That was unbelievable. I think it's it's like wide to west, Eddie. It's on that sort of scale.
Really?
And then on Sunday at Leichhardt Oval, West Tigers are playing North Queensland. It's quite ironic that they were celebrating 20 years since West Tigers beat the Cowboys in the grand final in 2005. All the old boys were there. Benji Marshall was the coach of the West Tigers who played in that final. He gave it a famous flick pass to Pat Richards, who scored in that final.
Yeah,
well, they actually had a try almost identical to that for West Tigers on Sunday, where somebody flicked a pass and they scored the try. But it didn't come out. It didn't come for a victory. The Cowboys came back, scored 3 tries in 5 minutes and turned it all around. But it just shows that nothing is predictable in rugby league. I mean, last week, Hull KR were playing Leeds. They were on track to be the best defensive team in Super League. They were on track to beat the record set by Wigan in John Mooney's era in '98. Conceding less than just over 9 points a game, and then Leeds cut loose and scored 28 points. You couldn't have predicted that in a million years, could you?
No,
well, that's the game. I was going to say exactly right.
That's the one thing that I must say that excites me about games like that. But we appear, both here and in Australia, we appear to have a fair old gap between the top teams and the bottom teams. And I know we get that. And there's no panic in Australia because they don't have relegation. And
we haven't here now. We haven't got that here now.
I know. But let's hope that helps it. I'm not quite sure about that. But the thing is that once you start changing things and you start bringing in different ideas, is that people like the London Broncos, they had no chance of being in the top grade before a ball was kicked. And I can't bring my mind to think what on earth are we doing to allow something like that. Before a season started, they knew that the London Broncos were going to be relegated. Now, to me, we've got to stop doing these things like that. And also, I don't know what your thoughts are, Ian, but why don't we make a move, because the Australian Rugby League have made it quite clear they would like to help us here in this country, right, financially, and take 49% of running Super League. Why on earth have we not sat down and sorted something out like that? Because they're making a lot of money down under. We're not in this country.
No, it's a worry, really, that we didn't sort of take up that offer, but then, the powers that be have gone another way, haven't they, it seems?
Well, let me tell you, Ian, it's Stevo's hobby horse. He mentions this just about every week on the podcast, thinks it's the way forward. I'm glad you've brought the whole thing back to modern day, the two of you, because, you look across the history books and the game has survived through thick and thin. I want to just ask you finally about the game now. What do you think? Expansion to 14 clubs next year, increasing overseas players up to 10 per club.
Yeah.
Are we in the right direction?
That's all a worry for me, Eddie, to be honest. Now, increasing the overseas signings to 10 per club is obviously a way to alleviate the fact that there aren't the players coming through, which then points the direction at what's happening at the academy levels. You've got 3 or 4 clubs that do work at that level, Wigan, Saints, Leeds, and 1 or 2 others maybe, but they just aren't producing enough players. So they're going down this route now of signing overseas players, 10 per club. It's going to be allowed. And I noticed Chris Radlinski immediately said we will never do that at Wigan. We cherish our juniors, which is commendable.
It is commendable.
I think more clubs should emphasise that fact, that they want to produce their own rather than take this short hit, a sugar hit really of signing players from overseas. But the worry for me is that they're letting 2 more, or they're going to allow 2 more teams in, which will diminish the product for me, because there are teams. I mean, don't want to go down the Salford route because it's been an horrendous year. But Cass have struggled this year. Huddersfield have struggled this year. We're going to have 2 more teams. They're going to increase they're talking about increasing the playoffs to 8 per season, which I don't think should be introduced at all.
We've done that before, haven't we? We've done 8 before. Yeah.
Funnily enough, the years we had 8 teams and there weren't many of them. Leeds won it from 5th twice, which but makes a mockery really of the fact that teams can be consistent all year and then a team can just bang 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 and win the grand final.
I bet you enjoyed it though, Ian, eh?
Well, as a Leeds person, yes, I would have enjoyed that. But I don't think it's... I mean, as a Leeds fan, I'm not a fan as such these days. I watch the game, I like to think, with objective eyes. And I always think back to 2017 when Leeds last won it, and Castleford were the best team that year by a mile. Darryl Powell missed out on that in the grand final, where they should have won it for the first time in the history, and they didn't. So I just think that we might be diluting the product by bringing two teams up.
I agree with you, Ian, on everything that you've said there, and we have to realise, we have to look down the barrel and say we need help, and that help has to come from finance, and we just do not have enough people who are getting interested within our game, is to sponsor our game, is to make sure that we can get somewhere at the level of what is happening down in Australia. Now, they'll have a team in Papua New Guinea in 2 years' time. Mm-hmm. They'll also have a team in Perth. Now, that is spreading the magic. That is spreading it. And that all comes about. I mean, the Papua New Guinea have allowed Australia to put in somewhere around about 80 million, not in regards just to regarding the rugby league, but because in Papua New Guinea, rugby league is their major sport. And we've got the same in Perth, where we're going to have a government that is going to back to bring in PNG. The Australian government want it to be a success. And of course, the NRL wants it to be a success. And once again, they've sent over, will like to help, would like to be involved, because they want to have a world market. That's where the super money comes from, is having a world market where every single country is fighting to get television rights for that particular sport. And they hope, and they're in the right direction of making sure that they get the revenue. So why not take up the offer that the Australians have given to us in this country? But we don't hear anything.
Have they actually come up with a concrete offer? That's the thing. If they have, well then somebody should be asking questions why they haven't been asked about it. But it seems funny that we started in 1895 and here we are back, and it comes down to money again at the end of the day, doesn't it?
It's money. Yeah, money rules all things.
Always said that, it comes down to money. He's right in a way. You mentioned that PNG club, and they're going to offer tax-free contracts to get the Australian players to go there. We've had a lot of defections from the Kangaroo team to go to join up with Tonga and Samoa, and this PNG team will make PNG very strong in 10 years' time. And we're signing all these overseas players. Where's England going to be in a few years' time with Samoa, Tonga, PNG all getting stronger? It's going to make it very difficult in the World Cup, Stevo, isn't it? That 1972 is going to look longer and longer away.
The development, Ian, as you well know, you come to Australia on a regular basis, is that the development at junior level is fantastic. I'm afraid we can't match it in this country. And it's difficult for all these amateur clubs to survive, not just to introduce young kids that can make it into the big time, but when clubs like that are struggling, you don't get people want to play there.
It's been a fantastic half hour or so, probably a bit more this week, going down memory lane. I just want to ask you both finally, where do you think we'll all be in 10 years' time when it's 140 years? And where do you think we'll all be in 20 years' time when it's 150 years?
Oh, I'd like to be around, wouldn't we, Steve?
Yeah, well, I was hoping you weren't asking me. I'd say, well, I'll probably be dead and buried by
then. You'll be gone but not forgotten, son. I'll tell you that. That's 100%.
Deary me. Listen, look, we go through all our problems, and the one thing that I do enjoy is the fact that, I'm a very close friend of our guest today, Ian Proctor. Absolutely marvellous, Ian, as far as you're concerned.
Steve, I think we've been hearing since we began, haven't we, that the game was dying ever since we started following it. So it's nothing new to us, all this.
No. Someone will breathe life into it. Don't worry about that. Been absolutely fabulous talking about the last 130 years and bringing it right the way back to the present day. Ian, thank you very much. 130 years covered and discussed. thank you for joining us on this special episode. It's been a privilege having you on the other end of the line.
Thanks for the invite. Thank you.
We may be absent without leave for a week or two, Stevo, because our producer and distributor of this podcast, Mark, is away on holiday next week. And then I follow him in the middle of September. But hopefully we'll get something sorted out for the weeks that we're both away. We'll do our best, but please bear with us if you don't mind. We'll definitely be back, though, for the semi-finals and the grand final, won't we? That's a promise.
Well, I hope so, Eddie. I can't afford to go away on holiday, so I'm always there. Give me a ring.
Pleading poverty again. There it is. Look, until the next time, here's to the next 130 years of rugby league, and we'll see you soon.